What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going game by game, talking about the different running backs I'd be starting and sitting this week, which we'll get to in a second. But first, of course, have to start things off as usual, the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was in 2019, Kenny Golladay averaged the least amount of separation in the league. In 2021, which wide receiver averages less separation than Golladay on a minimum of 250 receiving yards? The answer is Jamar Chase. Lumpnums was the first to get that right on YouTube, and at me and a bunch of numbers was the first to get that right on Twitter. Today's stat. Among wide receivers with at least 200 receiving yards, who has the deepest ADOT this season? That is average depth of target. All right, let's talk about some running backs. First up, we have a pretty epic matchup between the Jets and the Falcons. Should be a riveting game to watch. This one's actually seen its total rise, though, 44 to 46 points, so up to slightly below average. And the Falcons are 3-point home favorites in this one. Surprised me a little bit to see the line that close, but the Falcons have also been pretty bad. For the Jets, Michael Carter remains the only running back that I not only would start but own. He's the only one I'd even roster at this point on the Jets. My initial rankings have him as a running back 31 this week, which likely takes him out of consideration for most rosters, since if you match up the running back 31, that aligns with the wide receiver like 43, 44, so you're probably not playing him in the flex. And as the 31st best running back, I hope that unless you're in a 14 or a 16 team league, you have better running back options to play at running back 2. This is a winnable game for New York. He does have 2 to 3 targets every single week, and their team total is larger than average. This is a game that they're projected to do well in. So I guess it's not the worst play in the world if you had to go there in 10 or 12 team league, but I would just hope you have better options. And again, he's the only one that I would play. For the Falcons, my initial projections have Mike Davis as running back 24, so like a fringe running back 2 start. And given the matchup, it's tough to argue against playing him. I still think he's a decent play because obviously they are favored to win. They are at home. They are playing the Jets, right? But I'm definitely concerned with his workload moving forward. And while the Jets have given up, the most fantasy points per game to running backs, it's not because their run defense is the worst in the league. It's because everyone beats them pretty handily, and they can just run it a ton. And then the one game that they win, well, they face Derrick Henry, right? So gotta kind of look at it that way. Again, it's not that they have just this atrocious run defense that any running back going against them is going to dominate. It's just if you're down, a ton in the second half of games every single week, teams are going to run it on you, and you're going to give up a lot of fantasy points to running backs. That's not something we expect to happen this week. Maybe the Falcons are ahead, but we're not expecting them to be up by 3 scores and running it every play. So also when you factor in that there's a chance that Gallman gets a little bit more run this week, I think that, again, you can start Mike Davis, but there are definitely better plays, and I would prefer if you had a better option at running back 2. As for Patterson, I do think he's a better play than Mike Davis because he's been performing so well in limited volume, and you could say that it's definitely more risky. There's a higher variance to Patterson's role because he's not getting a ton of touches. But you could also look at that and say, well, soon the coaching staff might give him those touches, right? They might take some touches each week from Mike Davis and give them to Patterson. And if that happens, well, his ceiling is going to stay the same, let's be honest, because he just had 3 touchdowns and 4 touches. I mean, it wasn't that big, obviously, but he's been hitting his ceiling recently. Give him a few more touches. His ceiling kind of remains the same, but that floor elevates, right? The floor right now is a little bit scary because, he's playing at most 42% of the snaps. That's a low floor, right? Any player only playing 42% of the snaps isn't the lead back, is going to have a low floor. But if they can start giving him more of a workload from Mike Davis, that floor is going to elevate. Just realize that he's getting lucky right now with the touchdown. So obviously, on average, the production is going to come down. He's the running back 2 or 3 in scoring formats. That's going to come down. But I think he's a solid play at running back 2. And then you're obviously not playing Gallman right now. Patriots at Texans. This one's up next. An extremely low 40-point total. That is very, very low. I want to say it opened at 39.5 or something like that, But this is just a crazy low scoring game. Patriots are 8.5-point road favorites, so the Texans are projected to score less than 16, which is definitely not good. For the Patriots, Damian Harris is a really solid play this week. He faces the worst team in the NFL in a game that will almost certainly have a positive game script for him, and we know that's very important for Damian Harris. I'm still expecting them to activate Stevenson at some point, so watch the inactives in this one. This could be a spot where they decide, hey, we're going to win this game. Let's see what we can do with Stevenson, and they give him the ball. But if Stevenson is inactive again, then Harris is like a smash play, very likely to score a touchdown, easily has 2 touchdown upside, could easily go for 102 scores. Just watch the inactives. I'd say you're still absolutely playing him if Stevenson is active, but like if he's inactive, you're absolutely playing him, as he could be running back 1 this week. Playing him as running back 2 though. If Stevenson is active, he's more of like a lower end 2, but still a phenomenal play. Then you're not playing any other Patriots running backs. I know that Bolden had a nice game, but that game script isn't going to happen again, right? They're not going to be having to throw the ball as much against Houston. Playing from behind, they're going to be running it more, and they don't really use Bolden as much on early downs. The Texans, pretty easy. We're fading them every single week. Packers at Bengals is up next. This one has seen its total just like skyrocket to 51.5. I think it was like 48 to open. So people are really betting the over in this game. Good for fantasy. And the Packers are 3-point road favorites. For the Packers, always start Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon obviously needs to remain on benches as like a massively high upside option. He is still a fantastic upside piece, and again, just needs to be owned in all leagues, but he doesn't get enough consistent volume, doesn't have enough upside to where, and enough of a floor to where I'd be comfortable starting him, so I'd just probably keep him on the bench, especially since you maybe look at this game on the outside and you say that the Packers are going to dominate, but Vegas is saying this is going to be a relatively close game. And it's not moved, right? It's not like it opened at 2.5 and it's been bet to 5. Like it opened at 3 and it's at 3. So it's not moving too much from that number. So we're not expecting a bunch of blowout run for A.J. Dillon. For the Bengals, depends on the status of Joe Mixon. I think we're going to learn more. For me, again, I record these on Thursdays. So we're going to learn more on Thursday. We're going to learn more on Friday, on Saturday. If he plays, you just probably have to start him, right? Unless it comes out that he's going to be very limited, only going to play like half the snaps. It's pretty unlikely they would activate him and then only play him like 40 to 50% of snaps. That'd be like a little bit weird. If he's hurt, keep him out and just like let him recover. If he is out, then I would expect Samaje Perine and Chris Evans to kind of split the touches. You'd have Perine getting the majority of the early down work and goal line work, and then you'd have Evans mixing in on third downs, any 2-minute drills that they have, or if they do end up falling behind and they have to play, a very pass-heavy game script, you'd see Evans on the field a lot more. Evans would only be viable in like full PPR, pretty deep formats, 14, 16 teams. Perine would be honestly more of a desperation play in 10 or 12 team leagues. Maybe, again, I don't actually know the final status of Carson. You guys already saw that game happen. But if you've got like Carson and Montgomery, right? And you're like, well, now what do I do, right? They're both on my bench. Maybe you picked up Damian Williams. We'll go over. You're starting him. I would say Perine is like someone that mixes in there. As if like you lost some starters this week. Maybe you lose Joe Mixon and like you don't have fantastic options on the bench, that's when I play him. I probably wouldn't play him if your options are the same as they have them before and you just happen to add Samaje Perine for some depth. It's not like a good enough spot, and I don't feel good enough about his volume to where I'd play him under that scenario. Saints at football team is up next. This game has a 44.5-point total, and the Saints are 2-point road favorites. For the Saints, obviously, we're only starting Alvin Kamara, and we're always starting him. For the football team, the results have not been what we've hoped for so far this season, but you're playing Gibson as running back too. I believe he's a running back, like 16 overall right now in half PPR scoring. That's just off the top of my head. Don't quote me on that. But he's been playing not as good as we'd hoped just because we thought the receiving volume was going to be there. They're using McKissick more than we'd like. He did miss practice on Wednesday, but it's the same injury he had last week and he still played. It didn't look like he re-aggravated it at all. And Wednesday's a really big day. Don't freak out when players aren't out there on Wednesday. That's a very common day for people to get rest. If they miss Thursday, especially they miss Friday. They have limited practice on Wednesday, then out Thursday or Friday. Those are situations where we're like, okay, need to take note on that. In-week downgrades and missing Thursdays and Fridays. Missing Wednesdays, even being limited on Wednesdays, it's not a big deal. A lot of people do that and they're fine. So I'm expecting him to play. But of course, just like obviously just keep an eye on that situation. I'm expecting him to play. And then it's like McKissick, he's ranked in like the 30s in like full PPR leagues. Again, it's kind of like other players have talked about where it's like desperation play. Like if you're in a deeper format full PPR league, McKissick is fine, but he doesn't get enough consistent volume to where I'd ever really want to start him in a 10 or 12 team league. Next up, we've got the Dolphins at the Bucks. This game has a 47.5 point total, and the Bucks are 10.5 point home favorites. Massive home favorites in this one. Expect a very positive game script for them. For the Dolphins, I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know why they're giving Malcolm Brown touches. Like, he's been awful. He's always just not a great running back. He's been inefficient. Like, it doesn't make any sense for them to give him work, but they've been doing it. And given the matchup, I mean, as a massive road underdog against the best run defense in the NFL, it really doesn't matter. You're just not playing any of their running backs. For the Bucks, Bernard was limited on Wednesday, so watch this one. If he's out Thursday, out Friday, maybe he's not going to play. But if he's limited Wednesday, I mean, he might be out there. If he is active, it really hurts Fournette. Obviously, like, no one's playing Ronald Jones. But for Fournette, a lot of his value comes in the receiving game. And so if you remove a ton of that by having Bernard active, that hurts his upside and his floor. You're not playing Bernard, though, obviously. But then for Fournette, if Bernard is out, he was like a featured running back against the Patriots. If he's going to be a featured back at home as a a touchdown and a field goal favorite against a team that's most attackable on the ground, he'd be a phenomenal play. So watch the injury report here. I honestly think he's still a good play, even if Bernard is active, because the touchdown chances are pretty high. The chances for close to 100 total yards is pretty high. So you're probably playing Fournette this week. Eagles at Panthers is up next. This game is a 45 point total, and the Panthers are 3.5 point home favorites. For the Eagles, we discussed earlier in the week how I am concerned about the workload for Miles Sanders. Gainwell has looked really, really good, and this is like a situation I kind of talked about early in the week when I said it's like Tony Pollard. It's like Tony Pollard obviously hurts Zeke. Now, obviously, Cowboys also have a better total offense than the Eagles, but Tony Pollard hurts Zeke because they're scheming him to looks, right? This isn't blowout run. This isn't specific game scripts where Tony Pollard plays. This is like Tony Pollard gets his 10 to 15 touches each week. And I kind of feel like that's the direction that Gainwell is heading. He's playing so well, and he's a pretty good player, that they're going to scheme him looks. And when you're Miles Sanders, you're like, okay, he's getting schemed looks. This is an offense that throws the ball at the second highest pass rate over expectation. So they're actually, being fairly pass heavy. These are not good things for Miles Sanders. So I'm not expecting them to all of a sudden run the ball a ton, all of a sudden go away from Gainwell and just feature Miles Sanders. And because of that, even though Miles Sanders is the lead back, I can see a situation against a Panthers defense that ranks 8th in rush defense DVOA, has given up the 4th fewest PPR points per game. I can see a situation where you're benching Miles Sanders this week. If you have to play him running back 2, I think it's fine because, again, he is the lead back. He's the more likely of the 2 to score a touchdown. He's still getting some targets every week, some early down work, and the game script has been so bad in the last 2 weeks that it's kind of been his floor. But I am also fine benching him because I'm concerned about the workload. For the Panthers, and Gainwell, it's like you gotta, same type of thing with like McKissick. It's like you gotta be in a full PPR, fairly deep lead to be playing him, and even then, just keep him on the bench. For the Panthers, the fantasy points weren't like fantastic because he didn't score a touchdown, and the Panthers, they fell behind by a lot. It was a weird game script, but Chuba Hubbard was like pretty clearly their lead back with McCaffrey out. He did lose passing down snaps, so this is one thing we always need to consider. When you have a starting running back go down in like the second quarter of a game, the backup comes in, and you see them featured. That's great. But the team didn't know McCaffrey was going to be out, right? And so they didn't activate running backs that they would have activated had McCaffrey been out. And we see this happen a lot. We didn't know for sure it was going to happen to Chuba. I didn't think it was going to happen. But we always need to be mindful of the fact that this is true. And so when we see last week, Chuba was not getting a lot of third down snaps. It was going to Smith. It was like Rodney Smith. And that's because Rodney Smith wasn't active when McCaffrey was playing and then got hurt. So it's something you need to consider. We can't go all in on running backs when the starter goes down and we see a big workload for the backup, because we don't know how that team is going to adjust in the next week. Just something to consider. So Chuba is still a good play if McCaffrey misses time. He's still the back I would want to own as a handcuff, and I would want to continue owning him when McCaffrey comes back. But he's not as good of a play as we thought he was going to be. It does actually seem, though, like McCaffrey could return this week. Maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking. Maybe it's a little bit too early, and next week he'll return. Keep an eye on this, and obviously, if he returns, you just have to assume he's fine. They're not bringing him back if there's like a significant risk of re-injuring and he's not fully good to go. They're bringing him back when he's fine, and so if he's playing, play him, and don't play any other running backs there. Titans at Jaguars is up next. This game has a relatively high 49-point total, and the Titans are 4.5-point road favorites. This one is pretty easy. You're always starting Derrick Henry, and for the time being, we're always starting James Robinson. I say for the time being because you never know what the Jaguars are going to do. But assuming that he's still getting this workload, like we're always starting Robinson. Next up, we've got Broncos at Steelers. This game has a pretty gross, also a 40-point total, so tying that Patriots at Houston game for the lowest on the week. And the Steelers are 1-point home favorites, so that means neither team is projected to score over 21 points. Going to be a very, very, very gross game to watch. I probably will not watch this game if we're being honest. For the Broncos, we're expecting a split still between Williams and Gordon. Brutal game environment with possibly Drew Lock at quarterback if Teddy can't pass the concussion protocol. This is not a spot where you really want to be starting either of them, so I would look for better options. And then for the Steelers, also brutal matchup, brutal game environment, but it's Najee Harris. He's probably going to catch like 10 passes for 40 yards, and so you pretty much have to play him. Lions at Vikings is up next. This game has a relatively high 49-point total, and the Vikings are 9-point home favorites, which feels a little bit aggressive to me. Like, I know the Lions are bad, but the Vikings aren't some like juggernaut, right? They're fine, but they're susceptible to losing. So 9-point favorites, I don't know, it feels aggressive. For the Lions, I am personally considering Swift still a must start in all formats, all league sizes, especially against a Vikings defense that is not that good, and they rank 23rd in rush defense DVOA and 25th in yards per carry allowed. We always go over my 16-team league where I have Williams. I think it's a really good benchmark for what we're doing. I am personally playing him this week in the second flex spot since I have Carson, and again, I record these on Thursday. It doesn't seem to me like Carson's going to play, and even if he does play, it's like a brutal matchup, and he's clearly not healthy. So I'm just going to keep him on the bench probably no matter what, unless I see something that convinces me otherwise. And so in that second flex spot, I will be playing Jamal Williams. Overall, so for other league sizes, I have him as a running back 30 at the moment. That probably takes him out of consideration in 10 and 12-team leagues, unless, again, like I always say, anchor running back, RB0, so you need that like weak running back too, but everything else is loaded, then it's fine. But for the most part, you're probably not playing him in those formats, especially with Swift last week. They talked him up saying they want to give him more touches. Didn't necessarily happen, but he did tie his career high with a 73% snap share, and so it's a very positive thing for the outlook on Swift and not as good for Williams. For the Vikings, Dalvin Cook said he wants to play through this ankle injury, which is probably not a good idea, but I guess we have to just roll with it. If he's active, you're playing him. You're never benching Dalvin Cook if he's active. You just don't have a choice. And then if he is active, you can't play Madison. Obviously, if Cook is inactive, we're playing Madison, but it does not seem like he's going to be inactive this week. It definitely seems like he's going to play. Next up, we've got Bears at Raiders. This game has a slightly below average 44.5-point total, and the Raiders are 5.5-point home favorites, kind of like a weird range. It's like a little bit more than touchdown or a little bit more than a field goal favorite, but barely. Like, there's actually not that much that separates like 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6. Like, it's a very, very close range. If it got up to 7, you'd say, oh, huge home favorites, but 5.5, it's pretty close to field goal home favorites. So for the Bears, Justin Fields, he was announced as starter for the rest of the season. Montgomery finally had that blow-up game, finally looking great. This offense is picking up. And then what happens? Of course, Montgomery gets hurt. He's going to miss 4 to 5 weeks, so not great, obviously. And then there was weird timing with when they were announcing that, because you just couldn't put him in your IR spot in fantasy, which was pretty frustrating because everyone knew he was out for a month plus, and yet he was still just doubtful for a while. That was annoying. But now he can be in your IR. You can add someone. Hopefully you added Damian Williams. Herbert has only played 10 snaps so far this season. We can't really project him to have a large role. I'm expecting Damian Williams to be effectively the featured back, and that makes him a must play. If you added him this week, unless you have 2 top 15 options and a phenomenal play in the flex, you're playing him. I have him in my 12-team league and my 16-team league. I will be starting him in both formats. I believe in the 12-team league, he is put in the flex because I have 2 really good running back options. But in the 16-team league, hey, he's my running back 2 this week. I shouldn't even remember in that league. I can't keep track. But I don't think I have Montgomery. I know that's the league I have Carson. So I don't have Montgomery, so I wasn't filling in that. But I have Carson, so I gotta have to put him in there. But anyways, you got him. Find a way to get him into your roster. He historically, given the volume, has pretty much never failed. Now, I know that was on a better team, obviously, but again, he's a good player. He's capable in the receiving game. He performed well in camp, performed well last week. He's just a good running back. And any running back getting a ton of touches and a ton of snaps should be in your starting lineup, especially when they're relatively talented. For the Raiders, obviously Josh Jacobs is the only one you're considering starting, and he's in a good spot as a home favorite. That's pretty much the only role you want to play Josh Jacobs in. If he's a road underdog, leave him on your bench because he's not in the game plan. But as a home favorite, if they can be winning this game, definitely a chance that the Bears win, and that would be bad for Jacobs. But it should be a positive game script. He's fine to play at running back 2. But you know what? If you have better options than Jacobs, I'm fine benching him. I don't think any of you have him because he was tanked in the rankings, listed in the void. I don't think anyone watching this video has Josh Jacobs. But yeah, fine. He's a fine play. Browns at Chargers is up next. This game has seen his total drop down to 46.5, and the Chargers are 2-point home favorites. We saw the news that Baker has, now I can't even remember the injury off the top of my head. But he's got an injury, and maybe that was part of the reason that, was it torn labrum? Partially torn labrum? I honestly don't remember the injury. You can look it up. But he's hurt right now. Maybe that was the reason that he missed Odell on every single target downfield. It was embarrassing just watching him consistently miss a wide open Odell. And if that's going to keep happening against a really good Chargers team, 2 points? I don't know. I think this game should at least be at 3. I wouldn't be shocked if the total or if the spread moves to 3.5. The Chargers, I really think the Chargers are going to win this one. But it's also an easy one to break down for us. Even in the negative projected game script, and I don't say low total game, but potentially the team total for the Browns is lower than they're going to be expected to score most weeks. So for the Browns, touchdown upside is lower. Game script not expected to be as good, but you still just have to start Nick Chubb every single week. And then Eckler, of course, you're also starting. The only one you're considering is Kareem Hunt, but I've kind of gone over recently how I just think Kareem Hunt is a really good play at running back 2. Not many game scripts where he's totally out of the game. If they're dominating, he probably scored. If they're up, he's still getting carries. And if they're down, he's getting receptions. He's just going to contribute pretty much every game. And so I think he's worth using overall as running back 2. Next up, we've got 49ers at Cardinals. This one should be a really, really fun game to watch. 2 really good teams. Pretty high total, 50.5. Cardinals 5-point home favorites, but it's going to be the first start for Trey Lance. And I don't know, it's just going to be a really exciting game to see. For the 49ers, it depends on the status of Mitchell. My guess is that he plays this week, but obviously keep an eye on that. If he does, we're probably going to see a split, which I expect Mitchell to lead in, but barely, especially in his first game back. And that would probably just cross both of them off my list. Not a spot we're expecting we're never expecting a bunch of receptions for either of these running backs. But if they're going to split the carries, and there's not many receptions, I would just probably leave both on the bench and just like see how the split works out. If Mitchell is out again, then Trey Sermon is fine as like a desperation play in the second flex, or if you're weak at running back 2. But I don't know. They don't trust him at all, so I don't see why we would. And especially just there's no receptions. I mean, he didn't have like any receptions last week. He's the only active running back. They're giving, huge check receptions over him. Like, they don't trust him, so I'm not going to either. For the Cardinals, Edmonds should just remain locked into the running back 2 spot every single week. He is playing really, really well. Stable floor, high ceiling. You're playing Chase Edmonds. Connor is like a pray for a touchdown play in your second flex, or running back 2 again. If you went anchor running back, you went RB0. He isn't going to be viable unless he scores because he doesn't have passing game usage and he doesn't have enough work on the ground. But it's a good game environment and a good spot to where there's a good chance that he does score. I have him as running back 34 right now in half PPR, so I suppose it just depends on your league size, on your options, but you're probably not playing him at flex in like a 12-team league with one flex spot because the running back 34 matches up with a wide receiver like 45, 46, and you probably have, 3 wide receivers in the top 45, right? Like you probably have that, and so you're probably not playing James Conner. Giants at Cowboys is up next. This game has one of the highest totals on the week at 52 points, so it should be a pretty high scoring affair. And the Cowboys are 7-point home favorites, which means they're projected to score just under 30, so a really high scoring game for the Cowboys. For the Giants, always start Saquon. For the Cowboys, always start Zeke. Tony Pollard is a play that's very similar to James Conner. You're going to need a touchdown since the volume is going to be limited. Like there's only so many touches they're going to give Tony Pollard in any game environment, but it's a good game environment, high team total, and so the touchdown chances are definitely there for Pollard. Conner is probably more likely to score a touchdown, but Pollard has more reception upside, potentially more yardage upside if they can turn this into a track meet. I would probably leave Pollard on my bench personally, but if you have to use him in a 12 or a 14 or 16 team league, I'm not totally against it because he's still very talented. He's going to get his 12 to 15 looks. But I mean, I have him projected for like 9.5 points. So again, you're going to need a touchdown. Sunday night game should be one of the best of the season, honestly. We've got Buffalo traveling to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs. This game has a massive 56.5 point total, and the Chiefs are 3-point home favorites right now. For the Bills, this is a good spot for Moss since the touchdown upside is high in a game like this. Just understand that Buffalo could absolutely lean on the pass in this one. They historically have been very, very willing in these big games against really good teams to just abandon the run and just say Josh Allen is going to go out there and throw the ball 50 times, right? And if that's going to happen in this one, that is going to hurt Moss because I know that maybe it elevates the reception ceiling, but in general, like they're not throwing to the running backs all that much. They're throwing to wide receivers and they're throwing to Dawson Knox. And so it really, really hurts if they come out there and they run the ball twice in the first quarter, which is possible. Like it's in the possible range of outcomes that Buffalo just goes out there and they just throw the ball. Every single play, they're throwing it. And that's not good for the running backs. So it definitely decreases their ceiling. It decreases their floor. And I think that's honestly like the most likely outcome for these guys here. I have Moss as running back 25. Singletary is running back 35 right now. So it really comes down to what other options you have. But I would probably, doesn't seem like you would, but I would probably leave them on the bench in this one. For the Chiefs, it is a similar story to the past few weeks. Williams has operated as goal line back, which obviously hurts the floor and ceiling of Clyde. Clyde is again just like a low-end running back too, since he's only averaging 2 targets per game, and he has to do a lot of his damage on the ground against the Bills defense that ranks second, in run defense DVOA, 4th in yards per carry allowed. So really good defense. I know the team total is high. The touchdown chances are there. But if he's not the goal line back, the touchdown chances aren't as high as most people assume. But you're probably still playing him at running back 2. Monday night game is going to be the Colts at the Ravens. This one has a pretty average 46-point total, and the Ravens are 7-point home favorites. For the Colts, always start Jonathan Taylor. Hines is only really viable in like deeper full PPR formats, although he's best in those game scripts where they're trailing early and they have to throw a ton, which is the projected game script of this game. But again, if you're in a 10, a 12-team league, you probably don't have to go there. For the Ravens, Tyson Williams was a healthy and active last week, but I would not be shocked if they activated him this week, so just keep an eye out on that. You're obviously not playing him, but it could impact the other running backs in this game. Murray's the only one you're like realistically considering. He's in a good spot, home favorite. He logged a season-high 45 snaps last week. He got 18 carries, so he's the one we should assume is the lead guy. But he's probably only a lower-end option in a 12-team league, someone you're considering more in a 14 or a 16-team league. But if you're in a 10-team league, you should definitely have a better option. And if you're in a 12-team league, you're probably only playing him at running back 2 because he's not going to have receptions. And I don't know. I just hope you have a stronger team in a 12-team league and you don't have to play him because the Colts still have a quality defense. And we're not guaranteeing, this is a spot where the Ravens are definitely the team that should be favored. They should win. But would it shock anyone if the Colts, who have had a really difficult schedule to start off, but are still a team that has talent, if they came out and had just like a pretty close game on Monday night, especially if they have a good coaching staff? I wouldn't be shocked if that were to happen. And if that were to happen, we're not in love with any of the running backs in Baltimore if they're rotating so much. So that is my breakdown of every backfield this week. Remember, you can see my exact rankings by just looking at the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And if you want more free content, I'll be posting more videos on my TikTok that don't go up on YouTube. So check that out if you have not done so already. There's a link to that in the description box down below, or you can just search Nick Zylak into Discover over there. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.